In the scorched cradle where the sun bleeds crimson across a horizon of cracked bone and forgotten dreams, a boy named Elias Crow wakes to the sound of 6 heartbeats that are not his own. The wind howls like a dying coyote, dragging dust devils across the ghost town square of Redemption Gulch, and there, beneath the gallows that once hanged his father, 6 women stand in a circle of shadow and silk, their eyes reflecting the last light of a world that ended while he slept. He is 16, maybe 17, time lost its meaning after the great silence fell, and the earth cracked open to swallow cities, nations, and every promise ever whispered between lovers. The sky above is a bruised violet, streaked with the ash of incinerated forests, and the air tastes of iron and regret. Elias remembers nothing before this moment except the weight of a Colt revolver pressed into his palm by a voice that sounded like thunder wrapped in velvet. "Breed them, boy," the voice had commanded, a voice that belonged to no man, no god, only the raw, primal hunger of a planet desperate to claw its way back from extinction. 6 women. 1 boy. A mandate carved into the marrow of the earth itself, repopulate or perish. And in the silence between their breaths, Elias feels the first stirrings of a darkness older than sin, a hunger that coils low in his belly and whispers that salvation and damnation were the same face. The first woman steps forward, and the dust parts for her like a red sea of memory. Her name is Lilith Vale, though names are currency long devalued in this wasteland, and her hair is the color of midnight spilled across snow. She wears a corset of cracked leather and a skirt slit to the thigh, revealing a tattoo of a serpent devouring its own tail, an Ouroboros inked in blood that still glistens wet. Her eyes are twin embers, and when she speaks, her voice is smoke curling around the barrel of a gun. "You are the seed," she says, "and we are the soil. But soil can be barren, boy, and seeds can rot." Behind her, the others watch with the stillness of statues carved from grief. There is Ravenna, whose skin is the hue of desert rose and whose lips are stitched with silver thread, a punishment or a promise, Elias cannot tell. There is Isolde, tall and pale as moonlight on bone, her fingers stained with the indigo of crushed nightshade. There is Seraphine, whose laughter is a blade, and whose bodice is laced with the teeth of men who tried to claim her. There is Delphine, blind in one eye, the socket a cavern of starless night, yet she sees more than any of them. And finally, there is Mara, the youngest, barely older than Elias, her hair shorn close to the scalp, her body wrapped in bandages that seep something darker than blood. They are not sisters, not friends, not even allies. They are the last women on earth, gathered by forces older than language, and Elias is the last man. The weight of that truth presses down on his shoulders like the yoke of a condemned ox. The town of Redemption Gulch was once a mining settlement, built on the bones of Apache burial grounds and the greed of white men who believed gold could buy immortality. Now it is a mausoleum of swinging doors and shattered stained glass, where the saloon piano plays itself in minor keys, and the brothel mirrors reflect faces that no longer exist. Elias leads them through the skeletal remains of Main Street, his boots crunching on the vertebrae of rattlesnakes, and every step echoes with the memory of gunfire. The women follow in a procession that feels funereal, their shadows stretching long and obscene across the cracked earth. Lilith walks closest to him, her hand brushing the small of his back, a touch that is both promise and threat. "The world ended in fire," she murmurs, "but it will be reborn in flesh." Elias does not respond. He cannot. His tongue is thick with the taste of ash and the knowledge that he is both savior and sacrifice. In the distance, thunder rolls like the laughter of dead gods, and the first fat drops of rain begin to fall, each one hissing where it strikes the parched ground. The rain smells of sulfur and sex, and Elias feels the first crack in the armor of his innocence. They take shelter in the ruins of the Grand Ophidian Hotel, a once opulent palace of velvet and vice, now a cathedral of decay. The lobby is a cavern of shattered chandeliers and wallpaper peeling like flayed skin. Moonlight spills through the broken skylight, painting the women in shades of silver and sin. Elias stands at the foot of a grand staircase that spirals into darkness, and the women fan out around him like the petals of a poisonous flower. Ravenna is the first to break the silence. She unwinds the silver thread from her lips, each stitch pulled free with a sound like tearing silk, and when she speaks, her voice is raw, as if she has swallowed glass. We were chosen, she says, not for purity, but for potency. Each of us carries a curse and a gift. Lilith bleeds desire. Isolde brews oblivion. Seraphine cuts with a smile. Delphine sees the threads of fate. Mara. Mara is the vessel. She gestures to the bandaged girl, who stands apart, her eyes fixed on Elias with an intensity that makes his skin crawl. And you, boy, are the spark. But sparks can burn the hand that holds them. The night deepens, and the storm becomes a living thing, clawing at the windows with fingers of lightning. Elias builds a fire in the hearth using the splintered remains of a confessional booth, and the flames cast dancing shadows that twist into shapes of copulating demons. The women sit in a circle, their faces illuminated by the inferno, and one by one, they begin to tell their stories, not with words, but with touch. Lilith traces the scars on Elias's chest, scars he does not remember receiving, and whispers of a time when she was a courtesan in New Orleans, servicing men who paid in gold and left in body bags. Isolde crushes berries between her fingers, painting sigils on the floor that pulse with a sickly green light, and speaks of poisoning an entire regiment of Union soldiers with a single kiss. Seraphine sharpens a blade against her thigh, the sound a slow, sensual grind, and recounts the night she castrated a railroad baron with his own spurs. Delphine presses her blind eye to Elias's forehead, and he sees visions of a future where children with 6 fingers and eyes of molten gold rule over a world of ash. Mara says nothing, but when she unwraps her bandages, Elias sees that her skin is covered in writing, words in a language that hurts to read, words that crawl like insects beneath the surface. The fire burns low, and the boundaries between bodies begin to blur. Lilith is the first to cross the line, her mouth finding Elias's with a hunger that tastes of desperation and damnation. Her hands are everywhere, tearing at his shirt, his belt, his sanity. The others watch, their breaths sinking into a rhythm older than time, and one by one, they join. Ravenna's fingers are ice, Isolde's tongue is fire, Seraphine's teeth draw blood, Delphine's whispers are prophecy, and Mara, sweet Mara, weeps tears that burn like acid. Elias is drowning in them, in the salt of their skin, the heat of their need, the weight of their grief. This is not love. This is not even lust. This is communion, a sacrament of survival, a prayer uttered in the language of flesh. The storm outside reaches its crescendo, and the hotel shakes as if the earth itself is climaxing, and in that moment, Elias understands the true horror of his mandate: he is not the savior. He is the seed, yes, but also the side. Dawn breaks like a wound, spilling pale light across the wreckage of the night. The women sleep in a tangle of limbs and torn fabric, their faces peaceful in a way that feels obscene. Elias stands at the window, watching the sun rise over a landscape that looks like the aftermath of apocalypse. The rain has stopped, but the ground steams, and in the distance, he sees shapes moving, human shapes, but wrong, too tall, too thin, their limbs jointed backward. The great silence was not the end, he realizes. It was the beginning. Something else survived the fire, something that hungers for what Elias and the women are creating. He turns back to the room, and his eyes fall on Mara, who is awake, watching him with those insect-crawling eyes. She smiles, and it is the smile of a child who has seen the face of God and found it wanting. "They're coming," she whispers, and Elias feels the first true pang of terror. The days blur into a fevered dream of ritual and rut. The women teach Elias the language of their bodies, each one a different dialect of desire. Lilith is slow, deliberate, a serpent coiling around its prey. Ravenna is violent, her nails carving runes into his back that spell out his damnation. Isolde is chemical, her kisses laced with alkaloids that make him see gods in the cracks of the ceiling. Seraphine is playful, her laughter a whip, her teeth a brand. Delphine is prophetic, her blind eye weeping visions of children with wings of fire and voices of thunder. And Mara is the void, her body a black hole that swallows light and spits out stars. They take him in the saloon, on the bar where whiskey once flowed like blood. They take him in the church, beneath the crucifix that bleeds from its nail holes. They take him in the graveyard, among the bones of the miners who died chasing fool's gold. And with every coupling, the earth responds. Flowers bloom in the cracks of the pavement, black roses with thorns that drip venom. The sky clears, revealing stars that were not there before, constellations that spell out warnings in a language only the dead can read. But the shadows grow longer, and the shapes in the distance draw closer. They are the hollow ones, survivors of the fire who traded their humanity for immortality, their bodies stretched and twisted into mockery of the human form. They want what Elias has, the spark of creation, the promise of continuation. They want the women, not for flesh, but for wombs, vessels to birth a new race of abominations. Elias sees them in his dreams, their faces blank where eyes should be, their mouths sewn shut with wire, their hands ending in needles that hunger for the soft give of a belly. He wakes screaming, and the women soothe him with touches that are both comfort and claim. "We are yours," Lilith whispers, but her eyes say something else, "You are ours." The tension builds like a noose tightening around the throat of the world. The hollow ones circle Redemption Gulch, their footsteps silent, their presence a pressure behind the eyes. The women prepare in their own ways. Isolde brews poisons that can melt steel. Seraphine sharpens blades until they sing. Delphine weaves spells from the hair of the dead. Ravenna stitches her lips shut again, this time with gold thread, a vow of silence until the battle is won. Mara draws symbols in the dust with her blood, symbols that make the air shimmer and the ground weep. And Elias, poor Elias, learns to shoot. The Colt is heavy in his hand, but the weight is familiar now, like the weight of the women's bodies, the weight of their expectations, the weight of a future he never asked for. The night of the reckoning comes on the wings of a blood moon. The hollow ones descend upon Redemption Gulch like a tide of nightmares, their bodies moving in impossible ways, their silence louder than any scream. The women meet them in the street, a phalanx of fury and flesh. Lilith moves like smoke, her knives flashing silver. Ravenna is a whirlwind of teeth and claws. Isolde throws vials that explode into clouds of corrosive mist. Seraphine laughs as she cuts throats, her blade singing a lullaby of death. Delphine stands in the center, her blind eye glowing with the light of a dying star, and she speaks words that make the hollow ones falter, their bodies twisting in agony. Mara is everywhere and nowhere, her small form a blur of bandages and blood, her touch withering the hollow ones where they stand. Elias stands on the steps of the Grand Ophidian, the Colt steady in his hand. He fires, and the sound is the voice of God. The bullet finds its mark, and a hollow one falls, its body dissolving into ash. But there are too many, and they are too fast. One grabs Ravenna, its needles piercing her throat, and she screams, a sound that shatters windows. Another pins Seraphine to the ground, its mouth opening to reveal rows of teeth like broken glass. Elias fires again, and again, but the Colt clicks empty, and the hollow ones close in. He is going to die, he realizes, and the thought is almost a relief. But then Mara is there, her small hands pressing against his chest, and she whispers a word that is not a word, a sound that is older than language. The air ripples, and the hollow ones freeze, their bodies contorting into impossible shapes. Mara's eyes roll back in her head, and blood pours from her nose, her ears, her eyes. She is burning herself out, Elias realizes, using the last of her life to hold the hollow ones at bay. "Run," she gasps, and he does, grabbing Lilith's hand, dragging her toward the hotel. The others follow, battered and bleeding, but alive. They barricade the doors, and the hollow ones pound against them, their fists leaving smears of something that is not blood. The women collapse, their bodies spent, their eyes haunted. Elias stands over them, the empty Colt in his hand, and he feels the weight of their survival like a millstone around his neck. "What now?" he asks, and his voice is the voice of a man, not a boy. Lilith looks up at him, her face streaked with blood and tears. "Now we finish what we started," she says, and she pulls him down to her, her mouth finding his with a desperation that borders on madness. The others join, their hands frantic, their bodies a tangle of need and grief. This is not celebration. This is defiance. This is the last stand of humanity, played out in sweat and salt and the slap of skin against skin. The hollow ones batter at the doors, but the women do not stop, cannot stop. They are creating life in the face of death, fucking the apocalypse into submission. And in the moment of climax, when the world narrows to the pulse of blood and the roar of breath, the doors burst open, and the hollow ones flood in. But something has changed. The women's bodies glow with an inner light, and the hollow ones recoil, their forms unraveling like smoke in the wind. Mara stands in the center of the room, her body a pyre, her arms outstretched. She is smiling, and it is the smile of a god who has chosen to die. Go, she says, and her voice is the voice of the earth itself. Go and make the world anew. The hollow ones scream, a sound that is not sound, and they dissolve into nothingness. The hotel collapses around them, but the women are already moving, dragging Elias into the dawn. The sky is clear, the air sweet with the scent of rain-washed sage. In the distance, the first green shoots push through the cracked earth, and birds sing songs that have not been heard in a century. They walk west, toward the mountains, toward a future that is uncertain but alive. Elias carries Mara's body, her small form light as a promise. The other women walk beside him, their hands linked, their bellies already beginning to swell with the seeds of a new world. Behind them, Redemption Gulch burns, a funeral pyre for the old earth. Ahead, the horizon shimmers with possibility. And Elias Crow, the last boy, the first man, walks into the sunrise with 6 women who are no longer curses but covenants, their bodies the ark, their wombs the promise, their love the law. The earth turns beneath their feet and somewhere, deep in the marrow of the world, something ancient stirs and smiles.